The term Dragonborn carries a meaning far deeper than a shout that echoed across Skyrim in the year 4th Era 201. If we want to talk about the weight of that title and the possible fate of the Last Dragonborn, we need to dig into the concept's roots, namely the agreement made with Akatosh. After covering all that, we will have at least some understanding of the Last Dragonborn's place in the Skyrim Civil War and how they might shape it. Welcome to the 6th episode of my Skyrim Civil War series. With this video, I will, for the first time on the channel, create a detailed video about the Last Dragonborn. In the Civil War series, we examined the Stormcloaks and the Imperial Legion, and the important figures on both sides. We even looked at how ordinary people living in Skyrim were affected economically and socially by the war. I really enjoyed making this series. For that reason, I do not want to leave out any major topics that haven't been addressed in the Civil War as much as possible. Of course, there is another figure as important as key people like Ulfric Stormcloak, the Thalmor, and General Tullius, and we can never ignore their influence: the Last Dragonborn. In my Elder Scrolls lore videos, I usually try not to talk too much about player-controlled main characters, because when the subject is us, lore can become very personal. The best example of this is the Skyrim Civil War, when we look at the data we have. The outcome of that conflict, which has been a pivotal struggle between the Empire and the Thalmor, and even between men and Altmer since ancient times, is ultimately decided by the Dragonborn character we control. Who wins in everyone's Skyrim story depends on the decisions of the Last Dragonborn. That uncertainty about fate makes it difficult to include such a character in lore videos, and this example shows why. The Elder Scrolls universe defines us players as prisoners who glimpse the world outside the cell, and it emphasizes our ability to change destiny. I discuss this in detail in my Sotha Sil and Vivek videos. If you are curious about the player's philosophical position in the Elder Scrolls universe, I definitely recommend watching those videos. Because we can change fate, the only true way to speak of an absolute ending is to see the next game. Yet sometimes the universe's ambiguity can leave us helpless even when interpreting the past. Remember the events of Daggerfall. Who of us can say for certain who used the Tiber Septim totem? Likewise, we might not be able to know for sure who will win the Civil War in the 6th game. Anyway, I talked too much. Let us return to the main topic. If we want to analyze the Civil War properly, we must understand what position the Last Dragonborn holds, what they mean for Skyrim, the Empire, and the Thalmor, what power they possess, and the positions they might potentially take. In this video, I will explain what the Dragonborn concept means and discuss known Dragonborn figures from history. I will also share theories produced about the Last Dragonborn. Since you know it is impossible to speak definitively about who the Last Dragonborn is or their personality, I will not enter into those topics. Now let me take you on a historical journey through the Elder Scrolls universe, which is what I enjoy most. Before we start the video, if you want to support me, please like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to my channel. I am curious about your theories on the Civil War and the 6th game. Enjoy the video. The term Dragonborn first emerged in the First Era through the divine covenant between Alessia, known as the Slave Queen who led a revolt to free humans from alien oppression, and Akatosh, the Dragon God of Time. According to legends found in Imperial sources, Akatosh heard Alessia's pleas and took pity on the enslaved humans. He drew his precious blood from his own heart and blessed Alessia with this Dragonblood. Along with this blessing, he granted her the Amulet of Kings, said to contain his own blood. I should note that the purpose of this covenant carries deeply debated, specific, and metaphysical interpretations. Its greatest effect was the creation of a permanent barrier over Mundus, the mortal realm, to prevent Daedric invasions from Oblivion. The contract was quite straightforward. As long as Alessia's bloodline, those carrying the dragon blood, wore the Amulet of Kings and the dragon fires burned in the temple of the Imperial City, Akatosh's divine protection would endure. Through this covenant, the Daedric incursions that had plagued the world for centuries were largely suppressed. Whenever any part of the contract faltered, Tamriel faced enormous threats. The two greatest examples of this are the Planameld and the Oblivion Crisis. Having experienced one in Elder Scrolls Online and the other in Oblivion, I can say that this covenant prevented tremendous destruction for a very long time. Of course, the covenant had other consequences as well. Thanks to Akatosh's blessing upon Alessia's lineage, the political and theological legitimacy of the Tamrielic Empire was established for centuries. Since only those with the Dragonblood could wear the Amulet of Kings and light the dragon fires, these individuals were recognized as the true emperors by both the people and the elite. Thus, a lasting tradition of Dragonborn emperors took root on the throne of Tamriel. Those who lacked the Dragonblood could not wear the amulet. If they tried, the talisman would simply fall from their necks. The enchantment on the amulet offered both legitimacy and proof. Now let us muddy the waters a little and give this concept a metaphysical twist. In-game sources such as the Book of the Dragonborn state that the term Dragonborn has two distinct meanings which gradually became intertwined over time. The first meaning refers to the priest-kings known as the Dragonborn. This group includes Saint Alessia, Reman Cyrodiil, the founder of the Second Empire, and finally the Septim dynasty of the Third Empire. Their primary role was not military or heroic, but ritualistic. The main purpose of being Dragonborn in this sense was to wear the Amulet of Kings, rule the Empire, and maintain the Covenant by keeping the dragon fires alight. The second group is the Hero Warriors. This is the group that includes the Last Dragonborn we encounter in Skyrim. These individuals are born with the soul of a dragon. For those interested in the dragon language, this is called Dova Sos. They instinctively learn the Thu'um, the power of the dragons, and they absorb the souls of the dragons they kill. This soul absorption is essentially an act of taking power, and it is unique to Dragonborn. This category also includes the ancient dragon hunters of Nord legends and Miraak, the first Dragonborn, and I think this is the first time Miraak's name has come up on my channel. By the way, do not make the mistake of thinking that Akatosh's blessing upon humanity makes him a god of unconditional compassion. Quite the opposite. This covenant is actually a tool for Akatosh to establish his authority over humanity and the other races. Since this argument requires a deep analysis, I will not go into it here. But if you want to explore the details, you can watch the video I made about Akatosh on my channel. That entire video is built around this very argument. Now let us look at the parallels of Dragonborn emperors in our own world. When we look at the 16th and 17th century Europe, particularly kings like James I of England and Louis XIV of France, we see that absolute monarchs claimed their right to rule came directly from God. In line with this belief, they considered themselves accountable only to God for their actions. This was a political and religious tool used to make their authority unquestionable. We can also find similar examples in Middle Eastern and Asian kingdoms. But Tamriel's situation diverges from this method in one fundamental way. In the Elder Scrolls universe, the divine right claimed by Dragonborn emperors is not just a method or a claim, it is a metaphysical reality. In our world, if we were to ask James I to prove that he was God's representative on Earth, he could not prove it. But in Tamriel, this condition is bound by an actual covenant. The Emperor's divine right is tied not to belief, but to his literal ability to maintain a barrier against oblivion. And remember, at the end of Oblivion, we see Akatosh himself, one of the parties to this covenant, with our own eyes. But the strongest example of this covenant comes from Elder Scrolls Online. In the era of that game, Emperor Varen Aquilarios was a conqueror who seized the throne by force. However, he feared he would always be seen as a pretender because he was not Dragonborn. In an attempt to gain legitimacy, he used the Amulet of Kings to forcibly declare himself a Dragonborn, and in doing so, he was deceived by Mannimarco, triggering the Soul Burst, a catastrophe that tore the barrier between Mundus and Oblivion. From all this, I draw the conclusion that Varen's desperation for legitimacy and the fact that all of Tamriel viewed the Dragonborn status as an indispensable divine mandate proves that this right was not mere political propaganda but a reality woven into the fabric of the universe itself. And with that, we have seen what the concept of Dragonborn means, how it emerged, and why it is important for Tamriel. If you're curious about the life story of Tiber Septim, who I believe to be the greatest Dragonborn who ever lived, you can also check out the video I made about him. Now that we understand the concept well enough, we can finally turn our attention to the Last Dragonborn. When we consider the metaphysical structure of Tamriel, we see that the Last Dragonborn holds a truly unique position. They are not only a figure mentioned in ancient prophecies, but also the living expression of the prisoner archetype that appears in every installment of the Elder Scrolls series. I have talked about this prisoner concept before. The creators of the Elder Scrolls universe elevate our role-playing experience by shaping the characters we control into this archetype. The prisoner is a being without a defined history or predetermined past. Just like the Nerevarine in the third game or the hero of Kvatch in the fourth, the Last Dragonborn's race, gender, and backstory are left ambiguous, meaning they are defined by us, the players. This is one of the ways Elder Scrolls lore pulls every player into its world. These characters are the only beings not bound by destiny. As Sothasil says, the prisoner can see beyond the limits, and therefore can alter or complete the course of prophecy. Ironically, such characters are often described as being both slave to fate and master of it. This unique role at the core of The Last Dragonborn aligns closely with the 19th century philosophical theory known as the Great Man theory, so I want to explain this through that framework. Thomas Carlyle viewed history as the biography of great men. According to him, these exceptional individuals are born with inherent genius, willpower, and divine inspiration, and they shape the world around them, creating history itself. In contrast, Herbert Spencer argued that the great man is a product of their social environment. To quote Spencer, "Before a great man can remake his society must make him." In other words, heroes arise because of crises and societal needs. Now think about The Last Dragonborn within the context of these two ideas. They are the perfect synthesis of both theories. On one hand, The Last Dragonborn fits Carlyle's description. They are born extraordinary, possessing the soul of a dragon. This gives them abilities no social upbringing could ever provide. However, until that fateful moment in Helgen, The Last Dragonborn is an ordinary prisoner, unaware of their potential. What turns them into The Last Dragonborn is exactly what Spencer describes: the social environment. The return of Alduin and the Dragon Crisis, the emergence of immense need, reveals those innate qualities. To summarize, The Last Dragonborn is a hero by birth, but the circumstances compel them to act heroically. They are, at the same time, both the inevitable instrument of prophecy and a free agent of history. And that is yet another one of the paradoxes in the Elder Scrolls universe that fascinates me. The Last Dragonborn, with the metaphysical potential we talked about in the previous part, enters the stage at one of the most fragile moments in Tamriel's history. In the 4th Era, year 201, the Empire has weakened, the Thalmor, who want to bring about the end of time, have grown considerably stronger, and the land of Skyrim has been dragged into a civil war. I specifically emphasize in every video of the Civil War series that we should never see this civil war in Skyrim as a simple power struggle or a fight for the throne. This war is also the painful thrashing of a collapsing empire. It is a resistance movement where national consciousness is awakening. It is a reflection of imperialists' efforts to claim rights over a small people. I'm not an enemy of the concept of the Empire. I love Martin and Uriel Septim as much as you do. I also spent hours trying to save him in the Oblivion game. But the Empire we see in Skyrim is nothing more than a corrupt institution's effort to survive by consuming itself. However, I can't say the Empire is fundamentally harmful either. In reality, things are messy here. We can say that while the Last Dragonborn appears in Skyrim and fights against both Alduin and to end the Civil War, things are quite chaotic in the Imperial capital, Cyrodiil. Although we don't have enough information, we know that Emperor Titus Mede II is facing a sinister opposition. The Dark Brotherhood questline and the assassination attempt prepared for him are the biggest proof of this. Furthermore, even some Imperial soldiers can sympathize with the Stormcloaks, if only a little. They are showing signs of questioning their own cause. The main reason for their loyalty to the Emperor is the idea that standing against the Thalmor army requires unity. If there were no Thalmor enemy left, Titus Mede's power would probably face major questioning. In the current situation, Cyrodiil has lost the support it received from many provinces. Hammerfell gained its independence by fighting its own battle after the Empire left it alone. Morrowind is a mess. Political unity has dissolved, and both natural disasters and the Argonian invasion have driven them into a major crisis. Skyrim erupted in civil war. Only the lands of High Rock seem to have stability. So, with this being the situation in Cyrodiil, the question of whether the Empire's end has come, or if a new emperor is needed, is on all our minds before the 6th game. We can say that for the Mede dynasty, they lack the divine right that the Septims possessed. After the Oblivion Crisis, the covenant with Akatosh was no longer necessary. The Mede dynasty does not have the Dragonblood, and we don't have much information on how the public perceives an emperor not being Dragonborn. But we do know that those ruling the Empire are tired, weakened, and in a crisis of legitimacy. The Skyrim Civil War is its biggest symbol. Thrust into this chaotic situation, the Last Dragonborn takes on the role of the wild card, as some fans have pointed out, because without their intervention, this civil war would probably never have a clear winner. When we consider that the Thalmor's goal is to prolong this war as much as possible, we understand the necessity of the Dragonborn's presence. Their participation disrupts this equation and becomes a decisive factor. The Last Dragonborn is a one-person army equipped with divine power capable of shaping fate. The Last Dragonborn's first intervention in fate causes a philosophical conflict with the Greybeards, their first mentors. The Greybeards, who adhere to the philosophy of their founder Jurgen Windcaller, that the Thu'um should not be used in worldly power struggles, tell the Dragonborn to remain neutral in the civil war. However, the destiny of the Last Dragonborn is, by its very nature, opposed to the Greybeards' philosophy. According to the Greybeards, the nature of the voice is to learn not to intervene, but the very existence of the Last Dragonborn necessitates intervention. Politically, this situation reaches its peak in the Season Unending quest. The Last Dragonborn is such a figure that they force the sides of the civil war, with the Greybeards acting as mediators, into a temporary ceasefire for their fight against Alduin. The Last Dragonborn was born to intervene in Skyrim's politics. This opens a new window of questions for us. Should the Last Dragonborn truly be confined to Skyrim's politics? The fact that the Last Dragonborn has the power to end the civil war has inevitably led to a question within the fan community. Since the Last Dragonborn possesses the power to defeat even armies, and is the savior of Skyrim, why shouldn't they become the High King at the war's end? Let's examine the two major theories on this matter. The first theory is based on challenging Ulfric to a duel. According to Nordic traditions, at its core lies a Nord tradition supported by Stormcloak supporters. According to this, a challenge duel for the High Kingship is a legitimate path. If you recall, Ulfric Stormcloak challenged High King Torygg in this manner and killed him using his Thu'um. This theory suggests that after the Last Dragonborn defeats Alduin, they could claim to be Skyrim's true leader and challenge Ulfric based on this same ancient tradition. Defeating Ulfric in a duel would grant them unquestionable legitimacy in the eyes of the Stormcloaks and independent supporting Nords. Of course, some in the community point out that since the Last Dragonborn lacks noble blood, they might be considered a commoner politically, and therefore might not have the right to challenge a Jarl for the High Kingship. The other theory is built not on brute force but on political maneuvering in the Imperial style. According to the current Skyrim laws under Imperial administration, the High King is elected by a council of all Jarls called the Moot. The Last Dragonborn could win the throne through a political maneuver, namely by persuading the Moot. The key move here is to marry the late High King Torygg's widow and the legitimate Jarl of Solitude, Elisif the Fair. Through this marriage, the Dragonborn would gain legal legitimacy in the eyes of the Moot and also unite with the royal bloodline. These two fan theories actually reflect the fundamental philosophical conflict of the Skyrim Civil War, the clash between tradition and law. While the Stormcloaks defend a traditional legitimacy based on Old Nord customs, honor, and brute force, the Imperial supporters advocate for a legal legitimacy based on marriage and the Moot. In this respect, the theories about the Dragonborn becoming High King gain more depth. The idea of a character like the Last Dragonborn, whose power comes from Akatosh sitting on the throne of Skyrim or becoming emperor, would undoubtedly worry the Aldmeri Dominion, the Thalmor, the most. The Thalmor's perspective on the concept of the Dragonborn is directly related to their multi-layered goals. As I mentioned before, at the core of the Thalmor's actions lies an unshakable belief that it is the Mer, not mankind, who have the right to rule Tamriel. We even delved into the mythological origins of this. In the eyes of the elves, humans are an inferior race, a product of Lorkhan's betrayal. The very existence of humans is proof that reminds them of the divinity they lost. The banning of Talos worship is not just a political concession, but a theological necessity. The ascension of Tiber Septim, a human to godhood, is a profound insult to Altmer theology and their racial pride. While the Thalmor deliberately fuel the civil war to weaken the Empire, they also aim to shatter mankind's divine legitimacy by eradicating the worship of Talos. Tiber Septim, a Dragonborn, ascended to divinity after his death, taking the name Talos. For the Thalmor, the godhood of Talos reinforces the divine covenant that sustains Mundus and causes the elves to remain bound to this prison. Their ultimate goal is to erase Talos from the mythic plane, by destroying faith in him, thereby eliminating the human race, and subsequently to destroy linear time and escape this mortal plane. When we think about it in this context, the Last Dragonborn, another Dragonborn, is the entity with the most potential to follow in Tiber Septim's footsteps and secure everything he represented. The Last Dragonborn is like a living, breathing demigod around whom all humans could unite. Their existence is the biggest obstacle to the Thalmor's ultimate goals. The Last Dragonborn would serve as an anchor, reinforcing Mundus. Therefore, in this video, I must state that all the throne possibilities we discussed for the Last Dragonborn would be a nightmare for the Thalmor. For this reason alone, I might prefer to see the Last Dragonborn in a position of significant political power. The central question of this video, as you might have guessed, is whether the Last Dragonborn should become the Emperor of Tamriel. Since the arguments supporting their ascension to the Ruby Throne are based on historical precedent and urgent political necessity, let's examine these arguments. Looking at historical precedent, we can say that the Third Empire was conquered and unified by Tiber Septim himself, who was a Dragonborn. The Last Dragonborn could very well be seen as his second coming, a re-embodiment of Talos, and could repeat this unifying historical role. After all, in the Elder Scrolls universe, we know of instances where someone walked the path of a god and mantled them to achieve divinity. There's even a claim that at the root of Tiber Septim's journey to become Talos lies the possible mantling of Lorkhan. The weakness of the Mede dynasty constitutes the political necessity. If we accept the Dark Brotherhood questline as canon, and I see no reason not to, Emperor Titus Mede II was assassinated. The throne in Cyrodiil is therefore left vacant. What could be better than a powerful, charismatic leader with superhuman abilities to stand against the Thalmor, boost army morale, and reunite lost provinces like Hammerfell? The Last Dragonborn is a perfect candidate for this role. There are also philosophical parallels which I believe the creators of Elder Scrolls frequently employ. Tiber Septim's transformation into Talos bears a strong parallel to the Roman imperial cult in the real world. In ancient Rome, leaders with exceptional military achievements, like Julius Caesar and especially Augustus, were declared gods, divus, by the Senate after their deaths. This deification provided their heirs with unquestionable divine legitimacy. Those advocating for the Last Dragonborn to become emperor could put forward this model. They are a conqueror who defeated Alduin. Much like Augustus or Tiber Septim, they could transform their worldly successes into a divine right to rule. Now, without getting too carried away, let's delve a bit deeper into the lore and look at the arguments for why the Last Dragonborn cannot become emperor. The strongest argument we have is based on a theological foundation. The covenant between the Empire and Akatosh regarding the Dragonborn has ended. This is the key point of the entire debate. I mentioned that the primary duty of the Septims was to light the dragon fires to protect the barrier to oblivion. However, at the end of the Oblivion Crisis, Martin Septim sacrificed himself by shattering the Amulet of Kings, transforming into an avatar of Akatosh, defeating Mehrunes Dagon, and permanently sealing the Gates of Oblivion. As a result, there was no longer a theological need for someone to light the dragon fires and wear the Amulet of Kings. In this context, we could say that the functional role of the Dragonborn Emperor has expired. Furthermore, the Last Dragonborn has no legal legitimacy to the throne. Therefore, the most likely way for them to claim it would be to seize it by military force through conquest, just as Tiber Septim did. However, in an era with a threat like the Thalmor, such a maneuver could plunge Tamriel into another civil war. This leads me to what I'd call the imposter paradox. Remember the story of Varen Akularios from the Elder Scrolls Online? As I mentioned earlier, it proves that military conquest might not be enough, and without the Dragonblood, one could be seen as an imposter. However, Martin Septim's sacrifice demonstrated that the Dragonblood's function has become obsolete. This creates a paradox for us. The Last Dragonborn is someone who possesses a divine qualification for a job that no longer exists. If the Last Dragonborn were to come forward and claim, "I am a Dragonborn, therefore the throne is my right," this claim, much like Varen's, could be seen as an empty, symbolic gesture. So, in the end, we return to the same point. The safest path is for the Last Dragonborn to base their entire legitimacy on brute force, on conquest. But if they were to attempt such a path, honestly, it's very difficult for me to predict what its impact on Tamriel would be, given the current political climate. If you have any thoughts on this matter, I'd love to hear them. I've tried to answer a few questions as best I can. Now, let's continue with our speculations and talk about what possibilities might await the Last Dragonborn. First of all, I think the probability of the Last Dragonborn appearing as Emperor or the High King of Skyrim is quite low. The reason for this is that their destiny is not that of a throne, but rather the fate of a hero. Your mind might be a bit confused now, but things will fall into place shortly. If we look at the Elder Scrolls tradition, we see that it presents us with three strong scenarios regarding the characters we play. The first of these we can call the disappearing hero. Understanding this comes from understanding the meta reason behind the Elder Scrolls games. Bethesda's writing tradition requires that the heroes of previous games always vanish. The Nerevarine, the hero of Kvatch, the Forgotten Hero, and the Agent, their ends are all a mystery. Of course, there's the fact that the hero of Kvatch, through a later release DLC, took Sheogorath's place and visited us in Skyrim. But whether they lost their sanity or still possess their own self is another topic open for debate. Anyway, the reason for this attitude towards heroes in the Elder Scrolls series is to preserve player agency. Bethesda cannot state in the next game the Last Dragonborn was a male Nord, chose the Stormcloaks, and married Elisif, because millions of players have played as a Khajiit assassin, a High Elf mage, or an Argonian who joined the Empire. Canonizing the Last Dragonborn's race, gender, or choices in the Civil War would invalidate the personal stories of millions of players. To my knowledge, Bethesda has never done such a thing before. Furthermore, the Last Dragonborn has become a walking, talking, shouting demigod. Having such power freely roaming the world of the next game would overshadow the new hero's story. Therefore, the Last Dragonborn must be written out of the narrative. So, let's say they are written out. How could this happen? The first possibility seems to me the most tragic and likely. If you recall, at the end of the Dragonborn DLC, the Last Dragonborn becomes the new champion of Hermaeus Mora, the Daedric Prince of Knowledge and Fate, just like Miraak, the first Dragonborn we defeated. It's likely that the Last Dragonborn is trapped in Mora's realm, Apocrypha, in an endless pursuit of knowledge. After all, Mora tells us that the Last Dragonborn serving him was inevitable, and that their fate was written by him. We may have defeated Alduin, but we cannot escape the grasp of the Daedric Prince. How ironic. Another possibility is the journey to Akavir, an idea I consider less likely to happen, but one that excites me in terms of what it could add to the lore in the long run. Perhaps the Last Dragonborn repeats the fate of Morrowind's hero, the Nerevarine, and sets sail for the mysterious continent of Akavir. You know the rumor that the Nerevarine sailed for Akavir after completing their tasks. The Last Dragonborn going there in a similar way could strengthen the possibility of Akavir being introduced into the series in the long-term lore development. Furthermore, we have the fact that the Akaviri have historically served a Dragonborn. The very origin of the Blade's Order is rooted in the Akaviri. Perhaps the Last Dragonborn has a goal like gathering support from there. Who knows? Another possibility is constructed with a slightly more philosophical perspective. In our world, this is called the King in the Mountain myth. The most famous example of this myth is Britain's legendary leader, King Arthur. Arthur did not die after his final battle, but withdrew to the Isle of Avalon, and it is believed he will return when Britain needs him most. Bethesda could resort to a similar path for the Last Dragonborn. This would remove them from being a political figure and transform them into a mythological legend. Because in The Elder Scrolls 6, we might witness conflicting rumors among the people about whether the Last Dragonborn is a slave in Apocrypha or an adventurer in Akavir. This would allow their existence to persist as a legend, much like Arthur, with the hope that they will return one day. This tactic also doesn't invalidate any player's personal Last Dragonborn and serves the multiple canon system perfectly. And finally, I've reached the end of my video. If you've watched this far, first of all, thank you, and now I pose my question to you. Do you think the Last Dragonborn should become Emperor? While everything we've discussed shows that it's not really possible for them to become Emperor, largely due to Bethesda's narrative style, the best we can do until the 6th game is released is speculate, so I would love to read your opinions on this. The Last Dragonborn truly might be the most powerful character we've ever played in the Elder Scrolls series. However, I believe a character with this power is a divine intervention, sent not to rule Tamriel's political order, but to ensure that order can continue to exist. Once their task is over, that is, after defeating Alduin, there seems to be no reason for them to remain in the political equations. Like the previous prisoner heroes, they too must disappear and clear the stage for the next prisoner. And yet, they possess the power to determine the outcome of the Civil War. So why? Why do they have this power if not to rule? I hope you enjoyed the video. Honestly, I initially planned to make an analysis focusing on the Last Dragonborn's impact on the Civil War, but as I started writing the script, things got out of hand and it turned into a philosophical inquiry about the Last Dragonborn's fate and their place in the 6th game. But I'm happy with how the video turned out. If you'd like to support me, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Looking forward to seeing you in the next video.